Party of Korea. The regime's state-run Korean Central News Agency says they'll discuss what it calls a, quote, Korean revolution and the changing circumstances inside and outside North Korea. This gathering comes just ahead of the deadline North Korea has set for nuclear talks with the US. And US President Donald Trump has hinted that Washington may use military force against North Korea if necessary, after the regime warned that this end-of-year deadline is looming to resume nuclear talks. Easing J with the details.
Speaking to reporters on Tuesday in London at the annual summit of NATO leaders, US President Donald Trump revived the threat of military action against North Korea as negotiations remain in limbo over how to match the North's denuclearization steps with U.S. concessions. Touting the strength of the U.S. military, Trump said all options are on the table.
Now we have the most powerful military we've ever had, and we're by far the most powerful country in the world, and hopefully we don't have to use it. But if we do, we'll use it. If we have to, we'll do it.
President Trump had threatened to totally destroy North Korea in 2017, when tensions were sky high over the regime's testing of nuclear weapons and ICBMs. However, on Tuesday, Trump emphasized the close personal relationship he has formed with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, adding he hopes Kim will follow through with his commitment to dismantle his regime's nuclear weapons program. Trump also touched upon the defense cost-sharing negotiations with South Korea, saying Seoul should shoulder more of the cost of stationing U.S. troops on the peninsula. He said South Korea has agreed to pay an extra $5 million a year for U.S. protection, adding Washington now wants additional commitments.
Now, in the meantime, we're working with South Korea because it's burden sharing. And we're spending a tremendous amount of money to protect South Korea. And we think that it's fair that they pay substantially more. Last year, I asked them to pay more, and they agreed. Nobody knows this. I'll say it now, I think, for the first time. But they agreed to pay approximately $500 million a year more for protection.
President Trump's comments come as Seoul and Washington are currently holding their fourth round of defense cost-sharing talks in a bid to reach a compromise before the end of the year. 이승재, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's chief negotiator in the defense cost-sharing talks in Washington says there's no big change from the US side in regards to President Trump's demand for more money. Speaking to reporters upon his arrival at the US State Department on Tuesday, Jong Eun-bo said President Trump has always demanded Seoul pay more. However, Jong refused to be drawn when asked what alternatives the South Korean side was bringing to this latest round of talks. The negotiations continue on Wednesday. The US has not ruled out imposing high tariffs on imported autos. US Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross says they've been negotiating with individual automakers and they have had some very good benefits through those negotiations. He added that it may or may not turn out there is any need for the tariffs. President Trump has threatened a 25% tax on imported autos. He did so in mid-May, but decided to have a review period until mid-November. South Korean autos were not mentioned directly, but one of the reasons why the US postponed imposing the tariffs was to review recent renegotiations of the South Korea-US FTA and the US-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. Now, it appears the US-China trade war could drag on past the 2020 US presidential election. President Trump implied that might be the case on Tuesday, saying he had no deadline at all to close a deal with Beijing. Che Jong-yoon reports.
U.S. President Donald Trump signaled Tuesday that Washington's signing of a trade agreement with China could be delayed until after the presidential election in November next year. Speaking at a meeting of NATO leaders in London, Trump said there were no deadlines for a deal with China, denting hopes that the world's two largest economies could soon reach an initial deal to ease the damaging global effects of their trade war. He stressed the importance of inking a deal that benefits the U.S., but insisted Beijing is eager to reach an agreement.
I have to make the right deal. I'm not going to make a deal that's not going to be great for our country. And it can't be an even deal. If it's an even deal, it's no good.
Following President's remarks, U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross said Washington's goal has not changed and the U.S. is under no time pressure. Ross warned that additional tariffs could be imposed on China next month unless there is substantial progress in talks. President Trump has threatened to impose 15% levies on an additional $160 billion of Chinese imports, including cell phones, laptop computers, and toys. Ross added that while working-level talks are continuing with Beijing, no high-level meetings are in the pipeline. Choi Jung-yoon, Arirang News.
Now, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is due in Seoul for the first time in 5 years as the two nations seek to improve ties that really soured over South Korea's deployment of a U.S. anti-missile system. During his two-day stay, Wang will meet with his counterpart, Kang Kyung-hwa, and pay a visit to President Moon Jae-in. Topping the agenda is expected to be President Moon's visit to Chengdu this month for a trilateral summit with Japan and a possible visit by Chinese President Xi Jinping to South Korea in 2020. The top diplomats are also likely to discuss measures to fully recover their economic ties that were impacted by Beijing's economic retaliation over Seoul's deployment of the so-called THAAD system. Japan's new ambassador to South Korea has vowed to work with Seoul to improve bilateral ties. Upon his arrival in South Korea on Tuesday, Koji Tomita noted the difficulties the two sides face, but says he will not leave the matter unattended.
There are many pending issues. I will express Japan's stance when needed, but I will also listen attentively to South Korea's position and play a role in connecting the two sides. An ambassador's role shouldn't be limited to dealing with matters that occur on a daily basis. I also feel the need to look beyond the next 10 to 20 years to improve our relations.
Tomita is a career diplomat who is known for his expertise in diplomacy with the US. He also has several years of experience working as a minister at the embassy in Seoul in the 2000s. Eyes will be on whether he'll be able to help the two countries mend their ties. Now, President Moon Jae-in has pledged that South Korea will work with China and Japan to combat the region's chronic issue with fine dust pollution. Park Hee-jun with more.
A higher level of cooperation with neighboring countries to combat fine dust pollution. President Moon Jae-in says a coordinated response to the problem has become possible after joint research between Korea, China, and Japan showed that each country has contributed to the air pollution.
정부는 사무국 환경장관들이 논의한 협력 과제들을 실행하면서 이웃 국가들과의 공동 노력을 이끌어내기 위해서 더욱 노력하겠습니다.
President Moon held a luncheon on Tuesday with the National Council on Climate and Air Quality to discuss pan-national solutions to fine dust. The council is a presidential committee in charge of tackling the fine dust problem, chaired by former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. The president thanked the council for its ideas and support for the designation of September 7th as the International Day of Clean Air for Blue Skies. Adopted by the United Nations last month, it will help the international community to jointly seek solutions to air pollution. He also asked for the committee's continued support for the P4G summit on green growth hosted by Seoul next June, so that it may serve as a platform for active discussions on climate change and air pollution. On a more local level, President Moon introduced a system to manage seasonal fine dust during a cabinet meeting the same day. Effective between December and March, the season with the highest concentrations of fine dust in Korea, the measures include limiting the use of grade 5 emission vehicles, mostly diesel cars. And in public agencies, the government will also ban cars with odd-numbered license plates from driving on even-numbered days and vice versa. These measures will begin in Seoul, Incheon, and Gyeonggi-do province before later being applied nationwide. But all of this, he says, needs to be backed by parliament.
미세먼지는 국민의 건강권을 지키는 핵심적인 민생 문제입니다. 정부와 지자체가 특별 대책을 시행한다 하더라도 5등급 차량의 운행 제한 등 계절 관리제가 안착하려면 법적 뒷받침이 필요합니다. 미세먼지 특별법의 조속한 개정을 기대합니다.
And President Moon called on the public to actively participate. The seasonal measures may bring some discomfort, but he emphasized that it's to ensure the health of all Korean people. Hakijun, Arirang News.
Now, Japan claims it would be difficult to accept initiatives that Japanese companies voluntarily pay compensation to the Korean victims of Japan's wartime forced labor. The comments were in reference to the so-called 1+1 plan, where South Korean and Japanese firms would create a joint fund to compensate the victims. According to an official at Japan's foreign ministry, the plan is unacceptable and would not be feasible. He added that such a plan would not correct any violation of international law. Now, Hong Kong's leader, Carrie will meet Chinese President Xi Jinping later this month as tensions continue to simmer amid the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Yoon Jong-min. So, Jong-min, some really interesting developments over the past 24 hours or so.
Well, Mark, while protesters in Hong Kong show little sign of backing down, Hong Kong's chief executive Carrie will reportedly visit Beijing on December 16th to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping. This is according to a report by Hong Kong-based broadcaster Cable TV. The two leaders are expected to discuss the current situation in Hong Kong, such as the recent election results and updates on the protests. The visit will come amid escalating tensions between the U.S. and China over Hong Kong. Following Washington's signing of a bill supporting pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong, Beijing is responding, banning U.S. military vessels and aircraft entering Hong Kong and slapping sanctions on U.S. NGOs. We'll take a listen to what Carrie had to say on Tuesday.
The Hong Kong Special Administrative Region government strongly opposes the U.S. passage and signing into law of the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. It is amply unnecessary and completely unfounded. Human rights and freedoms in Hong Kong are always protected by the Basic Law.
On a related note, China's state-run Global Times is reporting that some U.S. diplomats in Hong Kong and Macau could be expelled if they are found to have connections with the U.S. NGOs targeted by Beijing, including the National Endowment Democracy and Human Rights Watch. The French government has warned the European Union will retaliate once the U.S. imposes $2.4 billion of tariffs on French products like wine and cheese amid their disputes over a digital tax. France's Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire, who didn't elaborate on what form the retaliation could take, says the act is not behavior they expect from the U.S. because France and Europe are still among Washington's closest allies. Earlier this year, France imposed a digital services tax on global IT giants. The U.S. said the move discriminates against U.S. companies such as Google, Apple, Amazon, and Facebook. Cyber Monday posted record sales in the U.S. this week, with a record amount of purchases done via smartphones as well. Adobe Analytics says total sales amounted to $9.4 billion, up more than 19% compared to last year. The figure outstripped sales from Black Friday and Amazon Prime Day. Shoppers buying goods via their smartphones accounted for roughly a third of the sales at some $3 billion. The shopping frenzy peaked between 11 p.m. and midnight Eastern Standard Time, when consumers were spending an average of $11 million a minute. Top-selling goods included Frozen 2 toys, Nintendo Switch consoles, and Samsung TVs.
Now, South Korea's foreign exchange reserves hit an all-time high in November. The Bank of Korea says reserves amounted to $407.5 billion. That's up over $1 billion from October. It attributed the rise to increased revenue from its investments in foreign assets. As of the end of October, South Korea had the world's 9th largest FX reserves, with China topping the list. Now, South Korea's Air Force Academy has, for the first time ever, assigned 3 women to serve as flight squadron commanders. 40-year-old Jang Se-jin will be in charge of the 5th Air Mobility Wing and Air Refueling Squadron. 40-year-old Pyeon Bora will command the 3rd Flying Training Wing, and 40-year-old Park Ji-yeon will take over the 16th Fighter Wing. Now, Disney's Frozen 2 continues to be a massive box office draw here in South Korea, pretty much around the world, despite hitting screens several days ago now. Retailers are also enjoying huge profits from related merchandise. Kim Bo-kyung with the details.
It has been less than 2 weeks since the release of Disney's Frozen 2, but it has already been viewed 8.7 million times in Korea.
Frozen 2 was so fun that I watched it 5 times at the theater. The CGs were much fancier and the plot was interesting for adults to enjoy too.
And she's not the only person to watch the movie more than once.
Compared to Frozen 1 or Avengers Endgame, the rate of people watching Frozen 2 multiple times is much higher. It is 3 times higher than other movies released in the same period as Frozen 2.
Ranking number 1 in ticket sales and grossing around $62 million as of Tuesday in Korea alone, this movie is not just a box office smash, but also a huge opportunity for retailers who have prepared a wide range of merchandise based on the Frozen characters.
One of South Korea's major cinema chains, CGV, prepared plenty of merchandise for fans of the movie.
Since we launched the Frozen-related products, sales at the CGV Cine shop have increased by 9 times. And among them, the Elsa doll that sings the official soundtrack is the most popular.
One culture critic says there are certain reasons why Frozen 2 is so popular right now. Along with melodic theme songs and amusing characters, the plot itself gives the audience the hope and will to overcome their own personal difficulties.
Unlike previous movies where female characters were not at the center, females are the main characters in this movie. A lot of women are responding to their activeness in the movie.
With exciting adventures and catchy songs, Frozen 2 is likely to be a big hit for some time. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Now, BTS will perform at the FNS Music Festival, which is one of Japan's most popular year-end music events. Through its social media and website Tuesday, Fuji TV revealed BTS will perform on the first day of the annual music show on Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. local time, so set your alarms if you're a fan. This will be the first time for BTS to perform at the annual music gathering. The band will showcase the Japanese versions of their hit songs Fake Love and Boy With Love for the first time ever on TV. Now, the Gaia Confederation is an often overlooked part of Korea's early history. To shed light on its cultural and historical heritage and importance, the National Museum of Korea is holding a special exhibition on the ancient confederation. Kan Hyung-woo went to check it out and files this report.
For the first time since 1991, the National Museum of Korea has a special exhibition on the ancient confederation of Gaia under the title Gaia Spirit, Iron and Tune. With 12 states joining together, Gaia was an ancient confederation that lasted for about 500 years through the 6th century in the central southern region of the Korean peninsula.
Gaia's nature is coexistence. So through this exhibition, we hope visitors can learn how the 12 states of Gaia were able to live in harmony. Hopefully it can remind people that coexistence is still an important value we should pursue in today's society.
The special exhibition displays a total of about 2,600 relics collected from 31 institutes, including the Samsung Museum of Art Lium and the Tokyo National Museum. Divided into 4 chapters, Coexistence, Harmony, Power, and Prosperity, the exhibition offers a collection of pottery and ornaments from various regions of Gaia. Made by the ancient confederation's most skilled workers, this iron armor, which is now Korea's designated treasure number 2020, shows why Gaia is often dubbed as the Kingdom of Iron. Gaya's unparalleled ironworking skills at the time allowed it to equip its soldiers with iron armor, helmets, and swords so they could protect their land against the three big kingdoms, Goguryeo, Silla, and Baekje. The special exhibition of Gaya at the National Museum of Korea will run through March 1st next year. After that, it will be on display at the Busan Museum before heading to the National Museum of Japanese History and the National Kyushu Museum in Japan. 간용 아리랑 뉴스.
Good morning. We have some break from the freezing weather today, but very cold air will move in starting tomorrow. And on Thursday, daily highs will be below freezing at -2 degrees Celsius here in the capital. And a deep freeze expected to grip the country on Friday when we expect a low of -9 degrees Celsius. And we could see a mix of rain and snow in central western regions. In fact, Chungcheongdo and Jeollabuk-do provinces are forecast to see a similar weather pattern into tomorrow. And a sprinkle of snow and some rain might fall in the capital, so be aware of icy roads and let's all drive carefully. The daily highs in Seoul will be slightly higher than yesterday, topping out at 5 degrees Celsius this afternoon. In other regions, we'll see readings hitting the double digits. This Saturday is Daeseol, meaning a lot of snow in the traditional calendar. And it might live up to its name as central regions are forecast to see a mix of rain and snow on Saturday. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all the news and weather we have for now on this Wednesday morning here in Seoul. Do stay tuned to Arirang TV. Plenty more coming up, including our next newscast. That's happening at noon Korea times. Until then, goodbye.
(2016년 9월 28일) 부정 청탁 및 금품 등 수수의 금지에 관한 법률 청탁금지법이 시행됩니다.